Hey guys, Mr. Hyatt here. This is part 2 of the AP Environmental Science Chapter 8 lecture. In part 1 we left off talking about eliminating the use of wood shingles and siding in construction. I apologize for the awkwardness of how that ended. I didn't realize that I was about to time out. So another method for improving the management of forest fires is we can use these solar-powered micro drones to detect forest fires. What those are, they're essentially drones that have a solar panel on the top, and they just fly above forests, and they can detect forest fires as they happen. They can use infrared cameras to detect heat changes, and so we can get on a forest fire and prevent it from expanding and becoming a crown fire. So pretty cool use of technology. Another way we could better manage forests, we could reduce the demand for harvested trees. Check out that stat on the screen. 60% of the wood that we use is wasted. I know that I've been on a ton of job sites where, we have to cut a foot of a 2x4 off and we can't use it, so it just gets thrown in the dumpster. It's thrown in the burn pile or something along those lines. 60% of the wood that we use in the U.S. is wasted. More than half. So how can we reduce that? We can use non-tree fibers like kanaf and hemp to yield more pulp per acre, and they require less pesticide use. That's something that I'm looking at doing on my farm. We can limit the use of throwaway paper products like paper plates and things like that. That's where a ton of our wood that's wasted goes. And then we can stop cutting fuel wood from forests. We can use tree plantations that have fast-growing trees and things like that for fuel sources, and that's true worldwide. Several different ways to reduce tropical deforestation: provide foreign aid or debt relief, do debt for nature swaps, conservation concessions. Those are really cool government programs that essentially debt for nature. You probably did something like this when you were a little kid. I certainly did. I would borrow money from my mom to buy some toy, and then I would say, well, instead of paying you back, can I just clean your car, or can I just do something for you? That's kind of how a debt for nature swap works. Say Chile or Mexico or Canada, whatever, say some other country owes us money, we can say, okay, don't pay us back that money, spend that money on planting trees in your country. So you're taking out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere that we all share, so that's how you'll pay your money back. You'll just spend a percentage of that money on planting trees in your own country. That'll help you, that'll help us, it'll help everybody. You can crack down on illegal logging, create conservation reserves like we saw in Costa Rica, subsidize tree planting. That obviously is a governmental kind of a thing. As consumers, we can buy only wood and wood products that are certified sustainable, like I do. And then we can reduce poverty and slow population growth. Those things contribute, of course, to deforestation. Moving on to grasslands. Grassland productivity can be sustained and improved by controlling the abundance and distribution of livestock and restoring degraded rangeland. So we can use it better, we can fix what we've broken, and we can make sure we don't overuse it. So grasslands cover a quarter of the Earth's land mass. So we had a third of Earth's land mass in forests, a quarter in grasslands. We're chunking away big chunks of terrestrial ecosystems here. Notice that rangeland and pastures, basically if there's a fence around it, it's a pasture. If it's not, it's called a rangeland. If there's no fence, it's a rangeland. Tragedy of the commons right here. I mean, this is where the tragedy of the commons came from. Overgrazing occurs when too many animals graze an area for too long. Duh. You're exceeding the area's carrying capacity. Impacts of overgrazing, you're going to permanently damage the grass. You're going to reduce grass cover, so you're going to have fewer insects and things like that because they don't have cover from larger predators. You're going to lose soil quality because they're going to be compacted down. You're going to have cattle stomping dirt down and making it more and more compact. We're going to lose it to erosion because we don't have grass there to hold the water. And then, of course, we'll have invasions of plants that cattle won't eat because they won't eat them. So we're selecting for things that cows don't like to eat in the places that we like to feed our cattle. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. How can we protect them? Well, you guys looked at the Clive Bundy investigation. No matter what we do, it takes individuals holding themselves accountable to our laws for any program to be effective. Of course, we need to control the number of grazing animals. You can't graze 10 million cattle on a football field. There's just not enough grass. There's not enough food. Avoid grazing an area at the same time of plant growth year after year, or during the growing season. So like livestock, if you have small scale livestock, like 5 or 6 cattle, that's easy to do. You just rotate your pastures and you make sure that they're not in the same place at the same time each year. So like if you plant your grasses that the cows are going to eat in June every year, you don't want your cows in that field in June. You want to rotate where they're grazing. You want to use different pasture lands. Consider livestock diets and match to suitable areas. Are there things like switchgrass that you could grow, or things like big blue stem that you could grow and feed your livestock? Are there things that work better in your area for that specific livestock? Use herbicides, mechanical removal, or controlled burning to suppress invasive species. Just keep those invasive species out. And then permit short-term trampling by livestock to destroy root systems of unwanted plants. Essentially, what you do there is you say, okay, here's this strip of land that's got this invasive plant. We're going to use that as like a sidewalk for cattle or goats or whatever. We just want them to walk here or there. They're not going to eat it, but we want them to just trample those plants down and mess them up. Okay, moving on to 8.3, how can protected lands be better managed? This is really where Clive Bundy comes in. Basically, we get to what we talked about with Braving Iraq. It takes a government agency to step in and coordinate all this. It has to be a federal agency. It's tough when you've got different laws in different states. What do you do about borderlands? How do you really hold people accountable? You get into jurisdiction overlap and things along those lines, and that's tricky. It takes a federal program to really preserve wild lands. A lot of challenges on the world's parks. Many are too small to maintain large animal species, and our government is trying to shrink them. It's in the news several times in the last couple of months, where the Trump administration wants to shrink some of our parks. They want to sell off some of our national parks to get a quick infusion of cash into our economy. Another challenge is that a lot of them are facing invasive species. We know lots about that. Some are so popular that the number of visitors tears them up. You go see Old Faithful, and it's this really gorgeous natural thing, but there are also 20,000 other people sitting there watching it with you. So there are a bunch of litterers in that group. There are a bunch of smokers in that group, and so they're popular tourist attractions, and tourists mess them up. And then internationally, many are used illegally for gathering fuel wood, hunting and poaching, and logging and mining and things like that. We don't see as many of those issues here in the U.S. because when we do see those things, it becomes Clive and Bundy and it becomes a news story. Our national parks are also challenged. We've got 59 major national parks and 339 national monuments and historic sites. But yeah, like I said, with Old Faithful, it's just they're really popular. There are so few of them that many people go to them. Sorry, I stumbled through that. But they become islands of biodiversity. That's definitely true of Yellowstone. If these lands are protected, and it's definitely illegal to hunt these things in this forest, as soon as the wolf steps out of the forest, someone's gonna hunt it. Loss of keystone species hurts park ecosystems. We looked at wolves in Yellowstone. We've looked at how wolves might be reintroduced to to here in Indiana, and some of those kinds of things. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Less than 13% of Earth's land is protected. Less than 6% is strictly protected from potential harmful human activity. Of course, that doesn't mean climate change or any of the things that we are doing to the planet, but it's in that specific spot. So beneficial impacts to reserves can be increased by establishing buffer zones. That's something that Costa Rica does really, really well. So basically, think of like a bullseye where the center, nobody's allowed. And as you radiate out, so as you go out a mile from the core, maybe there's a stripe that's the inside stripe of the bullseye, and you can visit there, but you can't camp. And then the next one out, you can camp there, but you can't have a fire. The next one out, you can have a fire and you can log. And then the next zone out, you can mine and log and do things like that. So there are zones that we can use, and there are zones that we can't. Here in the U.S., we do more wilderness areas, and most of our wilderness areas are in Alaska. But they're essentially undeveloped lands that we want to designate as a wilderness area so that they will never be messed up. Activities that alter the ecology of areas are not allowed in these wilderness areas. Like you can't log, you can't build roads, you can't mine, you can't build buildings. And there is a Wilderness Act established in the mid-'60s. They've grown nearly 12-fold since the 60s, so we're gradually expanding upon our reserves and our wildness areas, our wildlife areas. So how does the ecosystem approach protect land-based biodiversity? Okay, so we're going to find hotspots. We're going to say, okay, these ecosystems are really important. So let's fix those ecosystems. We're going to use restoration ecology, so we're going to fix broken ecosystems. We're going to use reconciliation ecology. We're going to try to mimic nature and align with nature as best we possibly can. And then through all of those things, we can sustain biodiversity and protect ecosystem services. So there's this 5-point plan. Make sure you know all these 5 steps. Inventory the species. Basically, identify your hotspots. That's kind of part 2. Identify the threatened ecosystems with potential for recovery. So what's messed up and what's so messed up that we can't fix it? Okay, so let's worry about the things we can fix first. Are any of those places home to endangered species? Are they home to really important ecosystem services? Think forests, think coral reefs. Restore degraded ecosystems really goes along with point 2 there. And then make development biodiversity friendly. So provide financial incentives and tax breaks for conservation and for reconciliation designs and things along those lines. Is an urgent priority. We have to take measures to quickly protect terrestrial. I'm so sorry.